Okay, mic's on. All right, let's see. That was, well, this is Blueberry time right now. And that, that was Little Joe. And my guests have all arrived. Awesome. And let's see. Everything is, I'm hoping we're on the air. We are on the air. She was listening to the songs. Okay, that's good. Okay, so my guests are here, and like I said, today's topic is El Chicano moratorium that took place in 1970, and it's going to be 50 years already. One of the largest gatherings of Chicanos ever. And so to start us off, I have Dr. Ramon Martinez here. Hello, Doctor.
Good morning, Lupe. Buenos días, gente.
Buenos días. And all right. And so you're. What else do you do, Doctor?
I came to San Jose in 1969 from Bakersfield, which was a great place to be from in 1969, to come to San Jose State.
All right.
Right now, I'm secretary of La Raza Historical Society, and we have the first Chicano Raza history house in this county. There's 30 history groups. This is the first Raza history group.
All right, awesome. And then we also have Nanette, who's gonna hang out with me here and ask a few questions. Go ahead and.
Good morning, Lupe. Good morning, San Jose and listeners, KKUP listeners. I'm Nanette Regua, and I am a history instructor at Evergreen Valley College.
All right. And then we have
Maria Fuentes. Thank you, Lupe, for inviting us. Good morning, hermanos y hermanas out there in the community listening. And I am I'm a trustee for the San Jose Evergreen Community College District, and I retired 3 months ago from public mental health.
Oh, that feels good. All right.
Hello, good morning. My name is Cruz Hernandez Amaro. I'm a community member, and thank you so much, Lupe, for letting me take part in this discussion.
Should we test that?
Buenos días.
Hey, let's see.
Buenos días.
Does it
Good
sound
morning.
like? Yeah, it sounds like it works.
It
Awesome.
does?
Yeah.
Or
All
else you're censoring me.
right.
Well, my name is Felix Jose Alvarez. I'm originally a Tejano from McAllen, Texas. One of those places where they're putting our kids in jail.
Right. McAllen.
And I've been living here in California, all over the place.
Before the Chicano moratorium took place, and you know what the climate was like here politically.
I'm going to talk about what things looked like in our area before 1970 when the Chicano moratorium occurred. I said earlier that I'm a member of La Raza Historical Society of Santa Clara Valley. We call it La Raza because words like Chicano, Mexican American, Hispanic, people argue all day. We're everything of those labels. We're all of them. Remember that just in this county alone, there's almost a half million. The census says Latino, Spanish surname, and they're all kinds of people. So La Raza is open. And remember, La Raza is Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Central Americans. That's why we call it that. It's also called of the Valley because in the 1930s and 40s, la gente lived on the farms all over the place. And in 1949, El Excentrico magazine started here in San Jose, started by a Tejano, 1949. And they had people reporting all the way from Union City, Redwood City, all the way to Salinas. So that's why we call ourselves of the valley, not of the county, because people came here, though they came here for religion, for culture festivals, to buy from all those places. Anyway, so with that tema, I want to also clarify that I'm going to be talking about our history, and the word, sometimes I'll be saying Chicano, sometimes I'll say La Raza, sometimes I'll say Mexican Americans, but don't get stuck on the labels, because we were very, very complicated, like I said. Anyway, I would just want to say that for young people in those days, there were three major movements going on in the country. And again, we've been part of all of them. There's no, in the 1940s, the black jazz movement was starting, and they are the ones who began to talk about being hip. And then in the 1950s, there was the beat generation that we sometimes call the beatniks. And they were about writing, about thinking, about how we should see ourselves. And then the third big thing that was going on was the counterculture movement, you know, the whole movement with you saying, this whole society is a mess. And so they had other ways of looking at things. And so sometimes you call that was the love and peace movement. And later on, hip ends up being hippies. And so you see all those labels, we were part of all of them. And if we look closely at ourselves, we'll find what we did and what we got from it. Anyway, so that was, in 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected the first Catholic president of the United States. And his victory was very much the work of the American GI Forum that started in Texas in 1948. All the veteranos coming back and not getting their rights. So already we were understanding national politics. After Kennedy was assassinated and Lyndon Johnson became president, the Raza also helped elect Lyndon Johnson because he was a Tejano, and as a young man was a teacher in a Mexican school, a segregated Mexican school in Texas. In 1960, there was a Mexican song called A la Guerra. And I have a version, you can find a version of it on YouTube by Los Alegres de Terran. And
it's different lyrics than the one that we heard
not
about.
too different.
No?
No, not too different. And I'll talk a little bit about the lyrics a little later.
Mm-hmm.
But you can hear them on YouTube. By 1962, Cesar Chavez had already, he left San Jose in 62. From 52 to 62, the CSO was a group that was here, that was fighting for voting rights. They statewide, they got pensions for Mexican farm workers at that time. They didn't give them Social Security, and they wouldn't give them state pensions, and they had been working in the fields forever. So the CSO changed the law in the state that if you could prove that you had worked for 20 years, you got retirement benefits. After 1952 in the CSO, in the 60s, groups like United People Arriba, the Confederación de la Raza Unida, they all were working on all the community's problems, especially in education. By 1964, Everett Alvarez, Chicano, Mexican American, he would call himself, from Salinas, went to University of Santa Clara, he got shot down. He was the first pilot shot down in Vietnam, and he stayed almost the longest for 8 years in prison.
Mm.
After that, his sister Delia Alvarez, here in the county, became an anti-war activist. Already in those times, Raza was very clear that we were taking the brunt of that war. Chicanos, Raza has always been military tradition. You all know that your grandpa, your uncles, everybody's been part of the military. So the idea that you would be against the military, that's not real easy for Raza people in 1960. But what they're beginning to see was that all the deaths coming back was Raza. Raza in the Southwest was 10%, the Southwest states, and 20% of the deaths were Raza. So we had double the rate in the Southwest. And so people were getting very clear about that. In San Jose, 1966, Ramon Bernal, he was 19 years old, graduate only a year out of San Jose High School. He was one of the first Chicanos who came back in a box. And there's a Ramon Bernal Park named for him right there on heading near Japantown. In 1967, Patrick Vasquez Jr. Was killed in Vietnam. His dad was Patrick Vasquez Sr., who was one of the leaders of the American GI Forum. And in those days, the American GI Forum was still not pro-anti-war or anything like that. But his father became very anti-war after his son came back. So the peace groups and of the youth of that time, they were for peace. They were for love. They weren't necessarily against the war. And don't tell me we weren't peace and love all the way, because you don't remember. You got to remember Santana at Woodstock, soul sacrifice. He put Raza on the United States map as far as the music. Anyway, so by 1968, there were 590,000 troops in Vietnam, and more than our share were Raza. And if we were there, as you know, we were up front. And so that's how the town felt at the time. In 1968, that's when you have the music of Little Joe, and I'm sure you'll be playing the song. And that song is very much a tribute to Chicanos. Anyway, after that, the other song I wanted to point out was What's Going On by Marvin Gaye in 1971. And if you listen to the lyrics of both those songs as you go, you'll hear what our feelings were like. So that's,
Right.
Anyway, Chicanos just before they organized the Chicano moratorium, they were about being against the draft, not against the war, against the draft. Then it turned into against the war.
I see, wow. I was just, the phone was ringing off the hook here, and if we're on the air, I can